We love you. Okay, that's good. Thank you. It's better than a note that said, we hate you, shut up, something like that. Good morning. It's still morning, isn't it? All right, just give me a second here to get all this stuff out here. Oh, God. So, I know if you're visiting here, you're looking at all these pages and going, oh, no. All right. Good to see you all. As Neo said, we're in a 4-week series on really evangelism, with the emphasis of just not thinking of the broader scope, just in your life, just thinking about witnessing to whoever God brings in your path, somebody at your work, and so forth. And so my message today is on the value of a soul. The value of that one person in your life, even that person that you don't really like to be around. When they come this way, you turn around and go the other way. I told the story last night. I had a neighbor who was a wonderment. To tell you how crazy he was, Mark and I had 30 leaders up to my house. It was in the summer. We had dinner, and these round tables, and I'm on a hill, and my driveway goes down. His house is right here. So this guy was standing on the bottom of my driveway, screaming at the top of his lungs what a horrible person I was. A blankety blank. I hardly even knew the guy. He just hated me when I was a Christian. All Christians are crazy. I mean, can you imagine having the leadership there and my next door neighbor screaming at the top of his lung, that blankety blank, you pastor, you guys shouldn't be listening to what he's, all kind of stuff. Why did I tell you that? Oh, but the point of this message is that God loves that guy as much as he loves me. That man's soul was just as important to ours, and there's another story with that guy, but that's enough. So go to Mark chapter 5 if you have your Bible, or you look it on you get the Bible on your phone. We have an app. The scriptures that I'm going to be using today are on the app, or it'll be on the screen. Mark 5. When I was in college last century, I had to take a philosophy class. I didn't want to take a philosophy class. Boring. And so one of the assignments in the class was we had to pick a philosopher, an influential philosopher, and write a paper on him. I thought, oh, great. So I went to my father. My dad had a PhD in philosophy, an advanced degree in theology, and he was an expert at the first 100 years of the church. As a pastor, it was great just to call my dad and say, what do you know about this? It's just the top of his head. I was just writing down. He was incredible. Anyway, he goes, well, Dave, have you ever heard of Albert Schweitzer? I said, no. He goes, really? I said, no. He said he was a Christian missionary in Western Africa, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1952. Okay. So I started reading about this guy. He was a bleeding genius. A lot of you have a 5-year-old son or daughter. So he started taking piano lessons at 5 years old. 3 years later, he was the lead organist at the largest Lutheran church in Stuttgart, Germany. 8 years old. Everybody wanted him to play the organ. I don't know if he could even reach the pedals, you know what I'm saying? 8 years old. People would come from far and wide just to listen to him play the organ. By the time he was 29, he had a PhD in philosophy, theology. He was a musicologist. In other words, he was an expert on all forms of music, especially on Bach. He did concerts all over Europe. People would pay lots of money to see him. On top of all that, he was a doctor, an MD doctor, specializing in research of all kinds of strange diseases. Before he's 29 years old, So at 29, going on to 30, he leaves all this. He was a Christian, believed that God was calling him to West Africa. He goes down there as a Christian missionary, starts a hospital and a research center. And because there were so many diseases, he had never seen that many diseases before, and so he wanted to help the people, so he started researching to try to find cures for these things. And I was reading one little part of a book that said when he first got there, he was using bamboo stalks as test tubes. This guy's a genius. And the way he would raise money for the hospital, every so often he'd come back to Europe, and they would put together these concerts for him, and people would come from all over Europe to hear him play the organ. All right? Now, later in his life, he was floating down a river or something, I forget, and it just hit him. What should be the Christian's philosophy on life, period. And it was 3 words: reverence for life. As a Christian, if our basic philosophy is how important each individual is. From that poor little orphan in India to King Charles in England, both of those souls are equally important to God. Now, it's hard for us to wrap our mind around that, but as far as God is concerned, that's true. Today's message is on the value of a soul. It's the second message in the series that we're doing on Just One, to just kind of emphasize, to think about the people around you and how important they are to God, and being open to talking to them about Jesus, inviting them to church, whatever that may mean. So we're going to be looking at one of my favorite stories about this. I mean, when I first read this, it just had an impact on me. But a little background. In chapter 4, Jesus has just finished teaching to a large multitude. Afterwards, late in the afternoon, he tells his disciples to get in a boat. Let's go to the other side. And the thing that many people miss is that a lot of people got into boats and went along with him. So it wasn't just Jesus and his 12 disciples, but some other boats. So halfway across or whatever, the wind starts blowing, and but Jesus was exhausted. He had fallen asleep, and his disciples were. I mean, these guys were fishermen. They were afraid. They thought they might drown, and they say, Jesus, wake up. I mean, exact words were their words. Do you not care that we're perishing? So Jesus got up, looked at the storm, said, peace be still. It was like glass, right? Well, I'm assuming. Now, I was in Israel. I've been to Israel quite a few times, and if I want to go again, it's just, not a good time to go over there right now. But anyway, one of the times I went, right in the Sea of Galilee, there's a big museum where they have what's known as a Jesus boat. The Sea of Galilee had, receded, and they saw this boat from the time of Jesus. And so they got a movie there, how they got this 2,000-year boat, out of the mud, preserved it. And so there's a replica of it in the museum, and you get a really good idea of the size of boat, the fishing boat that we're talking about, and some of you have gone with me to Israel, you know that, and many of you have. One of the times, we got there, we went to the museum, we saw the boat, we saw the movie, and just in that short time, probably half an hour, the wind went from 0 to about 50, 55 miles. I mean, it was unbelievable. The sea was going like that. That's how fast it can go from calm to craziness. So the tour guide said, would you guys like to go up on the Golden Heights? Because that's where the wind comes. He says, it's incredible. You think it's blowing hard here. Well, we get up there, and it's blowing, I am not kidding you, 60 miles. Any of you, if you've ever been in a wind blowing 60 miles an hour, you can't just stand. It blows you. I mean, if you put your arms like this, it's just incredible. So another thing I want to say about this is, I was just trying to make the point that storms come real quick. I've seen it myself. I believe the storm was of demonic origin. Jesus was going across, he was going to meet this demoniac, and but you know what? More on that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's, Mark chapter 5. So Jesus has just calmed the storm. They get to the shore, the lake shore there, at a place called the Gerasenes, excuse me. And, okay, let's read. So this group, Jesus' disciples and all these other people, they came to the other side of the sea into the country of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. And he had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one was able to bind him anymore, even with a chain. He had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Constantly, night and day, he was screaming among the tombs and in the mountains. He's a famous guy in this area, gashing himself with stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and shouting with a loud voice, he said, "What business do we have with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." I've always thought that was strange. These demons are asking for mercy. For Jesus had been saying to him, this demon or demons, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." For Jesus had been saying to him, "Come out, you unclean spirit." He said that. And Jesus was asking him, "What is your name?" And he said, "My name is Legion." At that, everybody stepped back. A legion in the Roman army was between 5,000 and 6,000 foot soldiers and anywhere from 200 to 300 horsemen. Now, whether he had literally thousands and thousands and thousands of demons or just many of them, I don't know. Now, there was a large herd of swine, pigs, feeding nearby on the mountain. The demons implored Jesus, saying, "Send us into the swine that we may enter them." Jesus gave them permission, and coming out, the unclean spirits entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they drowned in the sea. The herdsmen ran away and reported it in the city and the country. In other words, they ran back to the owners of these swines and let them know what had happened. And the people came to see what it was that what had happened. They came to Jesus and observed the man who had been demon-possessed, sitting down, clothed in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion, and they became frightened. Those who had seen it described to them how it had happened to the demon-possessed man and all about the swine. And they began to implore Jesus to leave the region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed was imploring him that he might accompany him. And Jesus did not let him, but Jesus said to him, "Go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." And so he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis. There was 10 cities that were Roman and Greek in northern Galilee. What great things Jesus had done for him. And everybody was amazed. I want you to think about, before we get into this, what trouble Jesus went through, took his disciples and all those people through for one pathetic, demonized lunatic. All this trouble for one pathetic, demonized lunatic. As I told you earlier, I believe the storm was of demonic origin. All those demons, the kingdom of darkness, knew Jesus was coming, and they tried to stop him. In Ephesians 2:2, Satan is called the prince of the power of the air. In John 12:31, 14:30, 14:11, Jesus calls Satan the ruler of this world. 2 Corinthians 4:4, Paul calls him the God of this world. I honestly believe that this storm came straight from the kingdom of darkness. They tried to stop Jesus from coming, but of course, they couldn't. It was probably late at night, or probably twilight when they got there. Because if you've been to the Sea of Galilee, even it was bigger in the time of Jesus, but it's not that far. It wouldn't have, if they wouldn't have had a storm, it wouldn't have taken them that long. But anyway, they came to the other side, and it was the Gerasene area, which was full of limestone caves, and people used them for tombs. And this guy was living in the tombs. And many of the caves obviously were used for burial places. Now, I can't help but wonder what Jesus' disciples and the people thought as this crazed lunatic who'd been living in the caves come running at them. I believe his fame went before him. I mean, everybody must have taken a step farther. This person's crazy. He could probably kill many of us before we even knew what happened. And another thing is that any Jew didn't want to have contact with anybody who was living in the tomb. Because if you had contact with someone that had just buried someone, or put spices on someone, or even contact with the tomb itself, even if it wasn't with a dead body, you had to go through quite an extensive ritual of cleansing. And I think it's important for us to understand that Jesus, even before he stepped foot out of that boat, knew exactly the condition of this man. He was living in the tombs. He was tormented day and night by demons. He knew this man cut himself. He knew this man must stink to high heaven, because who knows how long it's been since he'd taken a bath, and how many of you know dead bodies smell, so he probably smelled like that. He knew that he was a raving lunatic. But here's the point. Jesus went anyway. Jesus went anyway. And I believe specifically one of the main reasons, yes, he valued this person, but it was to send a message, to give an example to his disciples and to all those people that are around, and ultimately you and I, the value of one person, the value of a soul. That every human being is important to God. From the President of the United States to a little baby born in Grossmont Hospital. Every single person. Now, how can this be? I don't know. I don't know how God knows about every single one of us, about what we're doing, everything, about the billions of people on the earth, but he does. It's an irrefutable biblical truth. A person's soul is so valuable to God that he's willing to do whatever is necessary to save that person from destruction. 2 Peter 3:9 says this, "The Lord is not slow about his promise," this is his second coming, "as some count slowness." The Apostle Peter said that 1 day and 1,000 years are the same to the Lord, "but is patient towards you, not wishing for any to perish, but for all to come to repentance." Guys, God sees every single life on earth as valuable. In fact, so valuable that God sent his son to die for each and every person. Let me ask you a question. What gives, you don't have to shout it out. No one has, but what do you think gives gold its value? Gold is valuable. The value of an ounce of gold depends on what people are willing to pay for it. I'm old enough to remember when an ounce of gold was $269. The reason why I know is another story. I was in a gold futures for a while. Made some money, but that's another story. Then I lost a lot of money too, by the way. I don't want you to think I'm anyway. Savant. No, I thought I had a system. I would tell people about the system, and pretty soon I got 2 or 3 or 4 of my friends doing the system, and we started making money, and then we lost everything. Anyway, so when you go to an auction and they auction off a piece of art or a painting, what gives that painting value? How much people are willing to pay for it. And I think some of you already know where I'm going with this. The value of a person's soul, then, is seen in the price that was paid for it, which is the life of Jesus. Now, to further emphasize the importance or value of one person, Jesus cast a legion of demons, 2,000, into pigs. Well, he cast these demons, we don't know how many, but there's many, cast them into these 2,000 swine. Now and these swine or pigs ran off the cliff and either died from the fall or drowned in the ocean. Now, if you go to Israel with me, I'm going to take you to this place where we believe it happened. It's a place called Kursai. Found it by accident. I told the bus driver to go to one place, somewhere in the translation. He missed us, and he takes us to this place. We drive up, and I go, what is this? There's no cars there. What is this place? And, he tells me, I go, cool, everybody, we're going to somewhere I've never been before. Let's go. And now I go every time. It's just an awesome place. This is the point. The most important part of this story is these swine were very important to the economy of that area. Probably the most important industry of that area. 2,000 of them. What they used to do was kind of like a co-op. Cities were known for certain things. So this particular area was known for raising pigs or swine. And what people did is, this family had 150 pigs, this family had 200, whatever. They would put them in one herd, combine their resources, and hire people to take care of them, take turns taking care of them. It just was economically, it was smart. That's why whoever was looking after those pigs, when they saw this, they ran back to tell the owners, all your pigs are dead. So by letting the demons go into these swines, and then ultimately the swine killed themselves, Jesus destroyed a very important part of the community's economy. Many people think it's the most important part. And I believe when the people showed up, the owners of these pigs, they saw this crazy lunatic in his right mind. They saw their pigs dead, and they wanted Jesus to get out of there as soon as possible. Because as far as they were concerned, he caused the destruction of their swine, and he caused an economic disaster. Just get out of here before you do something else. So think about it. I think you are. To save, deliver one lone, pathetic, demonized lunatic, Jesus did not hesitate to destroy the economic prosperity and situation of the whole area. That's a message. It's quick, it is remarkable. But the message of that event and what Jesus did and how it happened, the message could not be more clear. This pathetic lunatic, who people wouldn't, would probably prefer that he just die, Jesus was willing to destroy the economic growth or the most important economic activity of a particular area. That tells me his life was extremely important to God, valuable. Think of the parables of the lost coin, the lost sheep. Jesus going out of his way to visit a Samaritan woman at a well. The story of Zacchaeus. He stopped what he was doing and went to Zacchaeus' house, stopping to heal people with leprosy, blind. The examples are many, but no example in the Bible is as significant and profound as the one that we read today. Because the healing of this man and what happened affected, hundreds and hundreds of people, their economic situation. The value that God places on one person's soul is immeasurable. Jesus said, your soul, your eternal soul, each of you, is more valuable than all the wealth and all the possessions in the world. Mark 8:36. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? Neil reminded us last week that the final command of Jesus before he ascended into heaven was to go into the world and tell people about him. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Paul's writing here. He says, if anyone be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, new things have come. Now all things are from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. People, over the years, people would come and say, well, I'm just praying about what my ministry is supposed to be here. And I said, well, it's very simple. God's given you a ministry. The ministry of reconciliation. Yeah, you're supposed to tell people about Jesus. A lot of different ways you can do that, but every single one of us have a ministry. The next verse after this says, Paul says, you and I are ambassadors for Christ. We are his representatives. We're little Christ. That's what Christian means. So I'm going to ask each of you a question. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think about it. Do you think God would have gone to all the trouble of becoming a man? That in itself is mind-boggling to me. Why didn't he just show up as an adult? I mean, really. The God of the universe had to have his diapers changed. He soiled himself. I mean, think about it. Little baby. But he got all that entailed, died on the cross, rose from the dead, sent his Holy Spirit. Do you think he's not working in people's lives all around the world? Absolutely. In John 12, Jesus said, people can't come to me unless I call them. He knows everybody. He's working in everybody's life. Because until a person dies, there's still hope. There's an important truth here that I want to remind you, and I'm sure I'm just reminding most of you, about this ministry of reconciliation and how involved God is in it. Romans 1 tells us that each and every person is born with the knowledge of God. Instinctively, they know there's a God. So the people that you work with, they all know there's a God in here. They might deny it, do whatever. That's why many times people are crying out to God during a fierce battle, thinking they're going to die. All of a sudden, they're crying out to God. Romans 1, 18 and 19. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, evil men who push away the truth from them. For here it is. This is, no one's without excuse. For the truth about God is known to them instinctively. God has put this knowledge in their hearts. Everyone. See, everyone. Everyone knows there's a God. Wow. Since that's true, there's another thing I think we have to acknowledge, and that is that a large percentage of people that you run into at work, whatever, they didn't go to church when they were kids. That's one of the things in our after-school Bible clubs that it just blows people's mind is that, you've never heard of Jonah. You never heard, they never heard any of these stories. You never heard of David and Goliath? No. And what a unbelievable honor to tell these kids these stories. They're just big guys. Wow. And a lot of these people around you, they didn't go to church when they were young. And it's not that they're avoiding going to church. It's just not on their radar. They may have come to the conclusion that there's a God, there's a great designer, something. They're acknowledging what they know inside their heart. But then the next question is, well, what religion is true? And most people don't have the time to go, read all the stuff about Islam and Hinduism. It is interesting to me that most people, when they start going on the track, Christianity is usually the last one they look at. But anyway. And then they look at these religions and say, which one is right? And if they come to the conclusion that, Christianity is probably the right religion, well, which one? Because if you don't go to, there's Lutherans, there's Catholics, there's Presbyterians, there's Charismatics, where do I go? Which one of these is really true? Another thing, most people have a conscience. And people think, how do I know what's right and wrong? You can say, well, it's because of your parents. But why do I feel guilty about this and that and the other? God's given you a conscience. Matter of fact, the Bible says you can sear your conscience like with a hot iron, which many people have done. So what's God's plan to reach all these people that I'm talking about? People that he's given his life for. And everyone in here, you've been a Christian for any length of time, you know the answer. You're squirming right now. I squirm. It's me. It's you. You and I are God's plan. And there's no way around it. So what am I talking about? Going and getting a little soapbox and going out downtown San Diego, standing out with the blowhorn. You're going to go to hell. Repent. I don't think that's going to be very effective. I believe what this involves is what we started talking about last week. Simply being available to God each and every day. And when God opens the door, I always joke about this, and you've heard me say this before. When God opens the door for you to talk to somebody, wherever that is, you don't have to wonder if God's giving you an opportunity. It's like a squeaky garage door. Yeah, boom, you know. You absolutely know. And at that moment, you have to make a decision. But you don't have to wonder. God says to you, well, you said to me, I'm open, here you go. I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. Don't laugh, because it's true. Some, standing right here, I've said some stupid things. I look over, I knew a minute I said it, I try to put it back in, it doesn't go in. And I look at my brother going, oh my God. Oh my gosh. And most of those things, I asked the Lord to forgive me, and, we move on. Lost 100, 200 people leave the church, but, we get, So, but there's one thing where God opened a door for me, and I'm going to try not to get emotional because I'm disappointed in myself. And I can't get over it. One of the first things I'm going to say to Jesus when I know I'm going to say, God, forgive me. I was doing a pastor's conference in Russia. And it went well and blah, blah, blah. But this young guy came up to me. He's about 18 years old. So he starts telling me a story. There was an interpreter there because he knew English, but, So he's 18 years old, and he was a pastor, a leader of a group of young people. Youngest 12 years old. It was in this Muslim country. It's one of those Ikistan countries. I don't remember which one. Turkmenistan. I remember that one, but it wasn't that one. It wasn't another one. And what had been happening, 100% Muslim. Jesus had been showing up in the middle of the night to these young people, and they were getting converted, giving their lives to Jesus, and then their parents at 12, 13, 14, 15 years old were kicking them out. If you stay here, I'm going to kill you. So they fled, and they were living in a abandoned apartment building. Now, if you've been to any third world country, and the apartments, They all look the same. South America, Central America, Russia, wherever, it's like all these communist countries said, here's how you build an apartment. They're all made of cement. I mean, they may be painted different, but they're exactly the same. And if you've seen them, you know what I'm talking about. So he's got, I don't remember, I know it's over 100. He's got all these young people. And he begged me to come. Implored me to come. Could you come and teach us? Could you come and just help us? He's like a high school kid. He's the main guy. He hardly knows anything. He's just, he's got tears in his eyes. Please come. I didn't go. You know why I didn't go? It was a chicken. It was chicken. Because it had been dangerous. They kill people in that country if they're Christians. I just can't forgive myself. Please don't come up to me afterwards. I'm trying to make a point. And the point is, when God opens you a door for you, go through it. Because you'll regret it. God will forgive you, but you'll regret it. I can't help but thinking in my own life, that would have probably been one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And I didn't go. Why? I don't really want to be, I don't want to be thrown in prison. I got kids, and I made all kinds of excuses. But if God calls you to do something, he's going to protect you, by and large. Go through, if you tell God, like I was telling him, God, just use me, whatever. And he opens a door, go through it. You'll never be sorry. You will be sorry you didn't. Understand that the most successful evangelism is simply reaching out to others in the ordinary business of life. Now, I'm 72 years old. I've been a Christian for 50 years. When I was a kid, everybody went to church. If you lived in a block where there was 10 houses, 9 of those people in those houses went to church every Sunday. Everything closed down. If you wanted gas, you better get it on Saturday. No gas stations were open. Nothing. We were a Christian country, all right? What happened? You can say all kinds of things. What happened was we, Christians, stopped going through the open doors that God gave us every day to witness to people. If Christians across America would have taken our ministry of reconciliation seriously, one person at a time, just go, hey, you're having some problems. Can I pray with you? We would still be a Christian nation today. And I'll argue that with anybody, anytime. We're to blame. We Christians are to blame. For me, I don't think you can, I'm off my notes again, oh gosh, but I don't think you can pray for revival without first asking God to forgive you and forgive you. God forgive me and my Christian ancestors for what we've let happen to this country. So this successful evangelism, what am I talking about? It's just a willingness to visit a coworker or a friend who's in the hospital. Believe me, no one wants to go to a hospital and visit somebody. Because most people, because the minute you go in there, you're confronted with your own mortality. And nobody in America wants to be confronted with the idea you're going to die. We do everything we can not to think about it. Praying with someone who's going through a hard time. Going through a door, just asking someone, listen, I know this is weird, but I feel like the Lord wants me to pray for you right now. Is there something I can pray about? And 90% of the time, they'll start crying. Or they'll just look at you and go, heck yeah. God's giving you, it's called a word of discernment, a word of knowledge. It's in the Bible, okay? He's leading you to someone, you can see it. Just ask him. You know what really blows my mind? How much of my life times in my life, I care what this person thinks of me. I don't know them. I'm never going to see them again. Why do I care that this person, I'm never going to see him again? Why do I care what they think about me? You all know what I'm talking about. It's stupid. Simple acts of kindness. Standing up for what we believe. There's a lot of people who know there's a God. Lots of them. But they look at all these churches. I mean, which one am I supposed to go to? But they're working with a Christian and someone says something or whatever, and that Christian stands up for the truth. They'll go talk to him. Guarantee it. When I was working, I'm not going to go into stories, but when I worked at a shipyard, Bay City Marine, and within a month or two, I was the tool master there, people were coming up to my cage on a regular basis asking me about God. I didn't say anything. They heard me. I mean, one of the things you don't cuss. How come you never swear? Which is another subject I like to talk to. We Christians, I don't know what's happened, but Christians swear and cuss like sailors now. I don't understand it. The Bible says no unwholesome word should come out of your mouth. I'm sorry, I'm so off my notes. Forgive me. Simple acts of kindness. Standing, you don't have to, thanks. Don't egg me on to get out of my notes, please. I mean, I'm already 8 minutes over. No, I'm 8 minutes over. Okay. Jesus told us that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Who are these workers? Are we supposed to be praying for more pastors? Maybe. We're supposed to be praying for more Christian leaders, more people to write Christian books? I don't think so. I think we're trying to, when Jesus said pray for workers of the harvest, he's pray for yourselves. You're the workers. You and I'm in this too. There really are a lot of people looking for answers, and God will lead you to them if you're open to it. The question is, and here's the question, are you and I interested in being used by God? Now, only you can answer that question. Because I think, at least up to this point, the majority of people going to Christian churches in America would answer that question, no. Put in my hour, whatever, at church, and I go, I'm busy, that's it. Am I interested in being used by God? That's the $1 million question this morning. I think it's a $1 million question during this whole series. Am I interested in being used by God? If you are, God will use you. I'm going to tell you a quick story. What time is it? Okay, so I'm going to tell you this story real fast, and it happened a long time ago, but it's the Lord let it happen to me so I would never forget how valuable a person is and what God can get you. I went and did a wedding up in Los Angeles years ago. It's like 25 years ago, maybe longer than that. Did the wedding, got dropped off. Back then, all right, when you checked in, they gave you your boarding pass, coming and going. You had it. You don't lose that boarding pass, because back then they wouldn't give you another one. What they would do is you had to pay money again. They would give you a new one, and then they would give you a refund. That's how it worked. There's no need for TSA back then. Anyway, so I lost a ticket. So I go up there, and I said, can you issue me a new ticket? No, sorry, you can buy a new one. I was just from LA to here. It wasn't even that much, but I didn't have a credit card on me. I had like 20-some bucks to my name, and they said, we can refund you. I said, look, ma'am, is flight so-and-so, is my name on there? Yes. I showed her, is my name on the itinerary? Yes. Can you put me on the plane? No. Now, there's a line I was desperate. I was preaching the next day. I'm stuck in LA. So finally she says, sir, can you please move? And I remember thinking, okay, God, you say all things work together for those who love God. You want me to hitchhike home? Literally, I looked, and there was a sign saying there was a free bus to the LA downtown bus station. Okay, fine. I had like 20-some bucks. So I get on the bus, I go down. Now, I don't know what the LA bus station looks like today, but I can tell you 25 years ago, you really didn't want to be there. And I got a suit on. I got a briefcase that someone in the church had just bought me. It was worth a lot of money. I'm thinking, I'm getting off this bus. Anybody who looks at me is going to think I've got money, but I don't. They'll be very disappointed when they rob me. So I go up to and I'm very angry at God. I'm trying to do your work. I got to preach in the morning. How in the world? So I go to the counter. I lay down what money I have. There was even some change. I said, sir, just get me as close as you can to San Diego. He goes, that'll get you all the way. Something went good. So I bought the ticket. I go upstairs, and there's a big empty room. I sit down. The door opens up. Boom. This is a long time ago. In comes this guy. He was obviously a sailor or a Marine, and he has one of those boom boxes. You remember? If you're old, you remember. And he's coming, and he gets closer. I'm thinking, go away. There was probably 75 seats in there, and he sits right next to me. Shuts the thing off, and he starts talking. And I want to talk. And he tells me a story. I'm thinking, you don't even know me. You're telling me this story. He has a high position in, I don't know, was a destroyer or some kind of ship that had nuclear missiles on it. And he was one of the main guys who would shoot them off. I mean, he was in a very sensitive area, and he had taken LSD. And he had a shift. And so he ran down on his shift, half naked didn't have his clothes on, and a football helmet on, just freaking out. And so the MPs came and got him. He told me the only thing he remembers about it is them taking him by his feet and dragging him up the stairs, and his head, because he had a football helmet, bouncing on the stairs. They were going to court-martial this guy, which they should. And he goes, the hardest part of this whole thing is I have to go home right now. My dad's a preacher. He was a Son of God pastor. And they've all been praying for me. It's just going to be horrible. The Navy says I have to go to them. I have to see my family. I mean, I'm looking at probably 20 plus years in prison. I've thought about running away, but they'll just find me. I'm hoping that maybe, with good behavior, I can get out of there in 5 or 6 years. But he said the hardest part is I have to go see my parents. They're praying for me. My mom praying for me. The congregation's praying for me. Here's the prodigal. And then out of the blue, he says to me, what do you do for a living? I said, you're not going to believe this. I'm a pastor. So his eyes get big. He literally jumps out. We're sitting there. He jumps out in front of me, and he looks at me, and he goes, you Christians are everywhere. So then I go, okay, God. So I sat down. He gets saved. And I finally got on the bus. I said, hey, and I called Mark. Hey, Mark. And I tried to explain to him how happy I was to be stuck in the LA bus station. But, he had to come and pick me up at 2:30 in the morning downtown. But I got on that bus. This is the point of this thing. I got on that bus, and I was so stoked that I lost my ticket, and I had to hassle with all that. I got to visit that guy in the brig, pray for him. Our church prayed for him, and he got court-martialed. He got a dishonorable discharge, but that was it. And the last I heard about him, he was a youth pastor. I kind of lost track of him. But what I'm trying to tell you is, if you're open to be used by God, you're going to have incredible things happen to you. I need the band out here. Let's all stand.